This is another unjustified tariff. You can expect us to fight against it, and you can expect us to take specific steps to protect those workers.
Well, the Trump administration is taking aim at a major Canadian export. The U.S. Commerce Department is hiking anti-dumping duties on Canadian softwood lumber to 20.56%.
Ottawa says it has a plan to fight back against new U.S. duties on Canadian lumber.
Recovered late morning. Lumber futures are, of course, higher given the news on the 25% tariff on Canada. There is already a 14.5% duty on Canadian lumber.
The Trump administration has drawn its sights on one of Canada's most critical exports, softwood lumber. What began as a subtle policy shift has quickly become a financial earthquake. The U.S. Commerce Department, in a dramatic escalation, hiked anti-dumping duties to 20.56% on Canadian lumber, adding weight to an already crushing 14.5% duty. For Ottawa, this wasn't just an economic inconvenience, it was a direct attack on Canadian workers and industries. Canadian leaders wasted no time vowing retaliation, branding the tariffs as unjustified and promising specific steps to protect jobs. Meanwhile, lumber futures spiked, a sign of just how volatile the situation had become. Washington once boasted that America's forests alone could sustain all domestic needs. That claim is now being tested like never before. What looked like a minor trade spat is mutating into a standoff with consequences stretching across both nations. The shift happened quickly. In just a year, what started as a narrow disagreement over lumber transformed into a dangerous trade confrontation. Washington's sudden tariff hike shocked the U.S. construction industry, sparking fears of widespread shortages. Canada, unwilling to bow, hinted at countermeasures targeting America's most vulnerable choke points. Analysts painted a grim picture. If escalation continued, the price of building an average U.S. home could climb by $14,000 by 2027. And that, they warned, would be just the beginning. Behind the statistics lies a simple reality. When nearly 1/3 of America's lumber supply is threatened overnight, the entire housing market trembles. This was no longer about logs and 2x4s. It was about affordability, jobs, and the future of housing in North America. Then came the shockwave. On July 12th, in the early morning hours, Washington announced a staggering 35% tariff on all Canadian softwood lumber. The news reverberated instantly across Canada's northern provinces. British Columbia and Quebec, two of the world's largest lumber hubs, hinted at retaliation, with BC's premier even suggesting export quotas to choke supply heading south. Such a move would weaponize lumber like never before. Industry analysts calculated that the impact could add $10,000 to the cost of a new American home. Builders warned they hadn't faced shortages this severe since the Second World War. And here lay the critical point. Canada's opening moves were just the start of a long and complex chess game, with every plank of wood now a bargaining chip in a high-stakes negotiation. To grasp the scale, consider this. Canada exports about 28 million cubic meters of softwood lumber to the United States every year, nearly 1/3 of the total wood used in American homes, apartments, and commercial projects. If that supply is throttled, U.S. builders lose enough lumber to construct the equivalent of 16 Empire State Buildings every single month. Even before quotas were formally imposed, contractors felt the pain. The National Association of Home Builders warned that tariffs alone could push construction costs up by $7,500 to $10,000 per home. Combine that with mortgage rates already hovering around 7%, and the dream of homeownership slips even further out of reach for millions of families. So why not just cut more lumber at home? The answer is brutally simple. America can't. Expanding domestic production requires navigating layers of red tape, years of permitting battles, and environmental restrictions that tie the hands of logging companies. Add to this a shortage of skilled workers, ongoing wildfires, and strict conservation rules, and the result is clear. Even with sky-high prices, American mills can't ramp up production quickly enough to fill the Canadian gap. Industry experts are blunt. Boosting domestic capacity takes years, not months. For a construction sector already under strain, time is the one thing they don't have. By mid-July, Canada's strategy came into focus, and it was tougher than anyone expected. For the first time, Ottawa openly discussed imposing export quotas on lumber bound for the U.S., capping how much Canadian companies could sell. British Columbia's premier declared readiness to move forward, signaling a dramatic break from years of restraint. The logic was simple. Canada's own construction boom, fueled by green housing, timber skyscrapers, and government-led sustainability projects, demanded priority. If forced to choose, Canada would keep its lumber at home before sending it south. This meant that every 2x4 crossing the border suddenly became a prized and potentially scarce commodity. The United States began looking abroad, hoping Europe could fill the gap. But Germany and Sweden, together, exported just 3.5 million cubic meters to North America last year, a fraction of Canada's supply. Beyond that, long shipping times, soaring logistics costs, and fragile supply chains made European lumber a weak alternative. Other suppliers simply lacked the capacity. Commodity markets saw the writing on the wall. Lumber futures surged to $650 per 1,000 board feet in March, with experts warning prices could break $765 or more if Canadian quotas hit just before the autumn building season. For perspective, the last time prices spiked this high, the average cost of an American home soared by tens of thousands of dollars. Builders now feared history repeating itself. Canada, however, wasn't simply restricting exports, it was diversifying. Through agreements like the CPTPP in the Asia-Pacific and CETA with the EU, Canada could sell lumber, tariff-free, to markets like Japan, Singapore, and Europe. Ottawa also pushed lumber producers to pivot into high-value products. Engineered panels, prefabricated housing components, and finished furniture, items often immune to U.S. tariffs. This three-pronged plan, limit U.S. exports, expand globally, and shift to value-added goods, promised to strengthen Canada's industry while squeezing U.S. buyers. As one observer quipped, the U.S. is fighting over 2x4s, while Canada is selling skyscrapers to the world. But the lumber war quickly spilled far beyond wood. Washington expanded tariffs across steel, agriculture, and manufacturing, creating the heaviest trade burden since the Great Depression. The ripple effects were devastating. Higher steel prices added $1,200 to the cost of a mid-sized pickup truck. Tariffs on farming equipment drove grocery bills higher. Feed and fertilizer costs pushed meat prices through the roof. Yale researchers estimated tariffs could add $2,800 a year to the average American family's budget, a hidden tax paid at supermarkets, gas stations, and hardware stores. Every sector was bleeding. Builders stalled projects, automakers cut hours, and farmers fought to stay afloat. Tariffs meant to protect American jobs were paradoxically threatening them. The most surprising twist came not from governments, but from consumers themselves. Canadians, outraged by U.S. tariffs, began quietly boycotting American goods. Border crossings, once buzzing with shoppers, emptied out. In Buffalo, sales tax revenues dropped nearly $5 million year over year as Canadian families stopped making weekend trips. Surveys showed 71% of Canadians planned to buy fewer U.S. groceries in 2025, not because of cost, but principle. This consumer-driven retaliation hit hardest in border towns, where malls, diners, and family-run shops relied heavily on Canadian visitors. Suddenly, the trade war wasn't just about policy. It was about people voting with their wallets. Empty parking lots and quiet customs lanes became a louder protest than any diplomatic statement. And here lies the bitter truth. Once consumer habits shift in retaliation, they are among the hardest things to reverse.